All right, guys. So this is chapter 5 of our textbook, Transporting the Tourist, the Aviation Sector. This is my 5th time trying to get this down to a 15-minute video. So it's going to be brief. Maybe. All right. So we're going to talk about the structure of the aviation sector, the roles of airports, the key trends in the airline sector, the importance of low-cost airlines, and airline marketing. All right. Airport roles. We're going to break this into airports and airlines because they are different. All right. So airports, what does an airport do? Well, it handles things, right? It's a hub that handles stuff. It handles the check-ins. It handles the security. It handles the baggage. It handles the retail. And it controls and handles passenger flow. In my opinion, that's its key purpose. I mean, yes, all those other things are great, but the whole purpose of an airline is to get people from ground to an airplane, in the air, to the destination. Okay? So, moving forward, airport management challenges. There's a lot of volume, right? The passenger volume is huge, right? So that's a challenge for your airport management. Need for efficiency. The airline industry and the airports, they need to be very efficient. Every company needs to be efficient to be successful. If another industry's company is not sufficient, they might go out of business because they're just not keeping up. If an airline or an airport is inefficient, people could die. Okay, so it's very, very important. The efficiencies of planning flights and making sure that some are coming in and some are going out, making the most money we can, but being safe at the same time, it creates a need for high efficiency. Constant investment is required. You're going to see later, as far as cost goes, that 25% of the costs are capital costs. All right? So that's a lot. All right. So regulations, we have to deal with regulations as well. All right. So let's move forward. Airports are either owned by the government or kind of public authority, which is an organization that's kind of private, kind of government mixed, or we have private ownership. And any type of ownership has a lot to do with how the airport is managed. Again, we're still talking about airports. Now we're switching to, nope, we're not. We're still in airports. All right, airports. Staffing is their major cost. 40% of their cost is staffing. 20% is those capital changes I was talking about. 15% is security, 11% is operations, and 14% is maintenance. Now, again, maintenance of the facilities, not the airplanes. Okay, how do the airports make their money? You would think they make it through airlines renting and taking their airplanes, putting their airplanes, landing their airplanes, parking their airplanes, fueling their airplanes, launching their airplanes. That's a big part of it, 55%. But 45%, which is not insignificant, comes from other things. It comes from other commercial activities like shops, parking, leases. Parking is a huge revenue maker. When you think about it, what do you pay, like $20-$30 a day for an airport parking? If you're gone for a week, right, that's expensive for you. But then you look at the size of those parking lots, and there's 2,000 cars there. That's a lot of money. All right, so move forward. Now let's switch to the airlines. Okay, so airlines, when we talk about people getting on airplanes and flying somewhere, there's really 2 different types there. There's scheduled flights and charter flights, all right? And generally speaking, it's scheduled airlines and charter airlines. Now, there are some crossover there, but generally they specialize in one or the other. Scheduled being like if you want to go to Buffalo, you look and see what flights are there to Buffalo. If I feel like that's one I want to get on, I get on it. If I don't want to get on it, it's still going to Buffalo. All right. Charter is I need to get to Buffalo. Hey, can you take me to Buffalo? And then I pay to make that special flight. Now, of course, I'm not going to do that by myself. Some rich people might, but generally speaking, it's organizations or whatever that charter those flights. All right, moving forward. Some growth factors in the airlines. We're going to see something that's going to cause the airlines to grow is lower costs. Some things are getting cheaper, more efficiency, but we also have the lower cost airlines, lower cost to customers. So when there's a huge movement of people are now associating flights to be cheaper than they were, then you're going to see an increase. I remember probably about 15, 20 years ago, looking at a flight from North Carolina to California, or Boston to California, and it was like $200, $250. And you might think that that's dirt, cheap or more, whatever. I don't know what you think about it. But I remember in the 80s, 40 years ago, it was $500. I was stationed in California, and a flight to Boston was at least $500. That was a month's paycheck for me. All right. So, yeah. Anyway, so they did go down drastically, and now they're coming back up, and it fluctuates. But we're going to talk about low-cost airlines and how that impacted it as well. But let's move on. Other growth factors is increased international trade, increased disposable income. Now, we're not talking about Americans. We always think like Americans think about what's happening in the U.S. Well, we haven't really seen a big increase in our discretionary income in this country. As a matter of fact, the opposite might be argued. However, we're talking about the rest of the world. 20 years ago, there's many parts of the world people just fought to exist, right? Well, those same people or same class of people that 20 years ago were living hand to mouth now have money. All right, so that's a big deal in the airline industry. Political stability, and that was in the book. I don't really. I think that's somebody trying to make it sound like it's politically stable. Political stability, yeah, it might be more so in some areas than ever before, but it's also less so in other areas. So. Increased leisure time. Again, we're talking about those developing countries. Deregulation effects. When we're talking about deregulation, anytime there's less regulation, it's cheaper, right? However, regulations as far as rules, when we talked about putting people in airplanes, we kind of want those rules to make sure that we're safe, right? But when we're talking about deregulation here, we're talking about government ownership. A lot of throughout the world, some in the United States as well, a lot of the jobs that gets people to where they're going through airplanes were government jobs. Okay, and then they're being put back into private hands. Now, some people might think that that's a mistake, and that of course you want the government to control that. It's going to be better if the government controls. Okay, if you think that, walk to your typical DMV and see how well that works, all right? Government-run things tend to be bureaucratic, so there's a balance there, but there has been quite a bit of deregulation, right? New markets or increased volume of old markets. When I say new market, I'm talking about we're flying to places that we never have before, countries that we never have, or we might have flown there, but not in the volumes that we are now. So that is growing the airline industry. Low-cost carriers. These are your Spirit Airlines and stuff like that. They can be up to 50% cheaper, a cost saving of 50% to the customers. They use secondary airports, so they don't have those expensive rents. They created a new demand, and they created global expansion because many people would never fly. And then they came around, they said, well, why don't I fly? And then they start getting used to flying, and it increases, it helps the entire industry, all right? It didn't work too well in Europe, though, and there was many different reasons, and I'll let you read this. It's in the book as well. But one of the things that I want to focus on, because this is a business principle period, is on the probably about 4 o'clock, you'll see the little octagon that says, or is that a hexagon? I don't know my gons. Anyway, it says competing with rival startups. All right. This is something that happens, right? You got somebody in another market, like in the United States, Spirit Airline or whatever, Frontier, actually Southwest is probably the granddaddy of them. They see that it's very successful, that they can make a lot of money by being cheaper, all right? And you're in Europe and you're saying, hey, let's bring that here. I'm going to be the guy that brings it here and I'm going to make a ton of money off of it. Well, you're not the only one thinking that, right? Yeah, there is a pool of money that can be made, but that pool is only so big, right? So it maybe supports 3 of those new type of companies, but 3 is not what's trying to get success or trying to launch. 50, 60, right? You're oversaturating the market. That's a principle. That's something that people do all the time when there's big trends, where there's big new industries out there, blue ocean markets they call them. They try to get within a very short period of time they get saturated and they get overserved, and then people start to fail. All right, so I need to move on. All right, so marketing airlines. The thing about marketing airlines is it has to lie with supply and demand. You cannot sell a flight when no one's flying. All right, you cannot sell a flight to a destination where no one's going to. So there's a lot of reliance on the not only the demand of my airline, but to fly, period. All right. And that depends a lot on you're reliant on the marketing and the success of destinations as well. You have to be customer focused, because at this point the popularity goes through the destination. I mean, some destinations get flown to, some don't, right? That you don't control. All you can control is taking care of the customer. So you have to focus on the customer. Pricing, service quality are crucial, right? You might be the cheapest and then you're the price leader and your service quality is going to be less. Or you're going to be the highest service and your price is going to be not as desirable. All right, moving forward. Frequent flyer programs and alliances. Frequent flyer programs build loyalty. You fly so many different times, you're gonna get points, which discounts in future flights. Quite frankly, for years, the only airline that my wife and I ever flew on was one specific airline, because we were members and all that other stuff, and we stopped after a while even looking at other airlines. All right, and then the second wave of the lower cost airlines came about, because I'll be honest with you, it was Southwest. We used to fly everywhere with Southwest. But then the second wave of your Spirits and your Frontiers and all those start coming, and it was like, hey, well, anyway, but it's still a very good thing. Alliances are sort of like a frequent flyer program, but the miles that earned are not from the airlines. It might be from a hotel. You earn fly miles or air miles or whatever for airline. Those are very good alliances. All right. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so the future of aviation. We're going to deal with digital transformation. All right, electronics, whatever, biometrics. That will be a lot with security and stuff. AI is changing everything. Zero Q terminals, they're already here. They're really doing a good job having kiosks instead of waiting in big lines. Security needs, all those things. All those things that we're seeing throughout our society. They have unique, like the air rage, road rage is turning to air rage. It's all stuff that was going to be dealt with. All right. So long-term outlook: mega carriers, limited airspace, environmental pressures, alternative energies, and internal intelligent infrastructure. All things that we can see in the future. Okay. So. We talked about the structure of aviation, the role of airports, the key trends in aviation sector. We talked about the importance of low-cost airlines, and we talked about marketing. It is vital for a travel and tourism professional to have a thorough understanding of the airline industry. If you don't, then you're not a tourism professional or a travel professional. That's just it. All right. So whether you're going to be one or not, if you decide that you're going to be in that sector, you got to learn about the airlines. All right. So that's it. We have our normal activities this week, and I will see you next week.